One of the most overlooked skills in product management is business acumen. You can have great ideas, write polished product requirement docs, and execute on your OKRs. But if you can't explain how your product makes money, why customers pay for it, and why your roadmap deserves investment, you're missing a critical part of your job. That's why in this video, I'm going to walk through all of the core business concepts every PM should understand, which I've listed here. This is part 2 of my series breaking down the core concepts every product manager should know across tech, business, and user experience. Let's get into it. In this video, I'm going to break down the core business concepts every PM should know into 4 main pillars. First, we have the customer, or who is the product and business for? Next is monetization, or how does the product and business make money? Then we have retention, which is understanding why customers stay with the business. And lastly, we have growth, which is understanding how the business grows. Starting with the first pillar, you need to establish who you're building for. If you can't clearly describe your customer, every downstream decision gets fuzzy. Your roadmap, your pricing, your positioning, all of it starts to break. At a high level, you should understand what is an ICP, or ideal customer profile, what's the difference between B2B, B2C, and B2B2C, and how does that change how customers buy, use, and adopt a product? What's the difference between a user persona and a buyer persona, and are they the same person? For example, if you're building education software, the user persona might be a teacher using the product every day in the classrooms, while the buyer persona could be the school board deciding whether the school can actually purchase it and allocate budget for it. That distinction matters because as a PM, you need to build a product users actually love, while also making sure it solves problems the buyer is willing to pay for. And also, what are the trade-offs between selling to small and medium businesses, enterprises, or both? For example, you may choose to sell to small medium businesses when launching a new product because they can onboard faster and give you quicker feedback on product improvements and what the market actually wants. However, since we're not selling to enterprise customers, the trade-off is that you may give up larger enterprise deals that bring in more revenue, which is probably worth it if your goal is faster iteration and product improvement. Zooming more into customer profiles, what's the difference between a horizontal product that serves many customer types and a vertical product built for a specific industry or use case? And lastly, how do these customer choices shape what a product needs to prioritize, simplify, or support? For example, if you're building software for small business owners that probably don't have technical teams, you'll likely need to prioritize simple setup experiences, templates, and a guided onboarding experience too. Once you know who you're building for, the next question is what could stop them from choosing you? Customers don't evaluate your product in isolation. They compare it against competitors, alternative tools, internal solutions, existing workflows, and sometimes the choice to do nothing. As a product manager, you need to understand that landscape and be able to answer who are the competitors, incumbents, new entrants, and disruptive players in the market. For example, if you're building a restaurant reservation app, your obvious competitors might be OpenTable, Resy, or Yelp, but there are actually a lot of other competitive forces in the landscape. Some restaurants still take reservations by phone, others use Instagram DMs, Google Maps could make bookings more native inside search, and also AI assistants could start booking restaurants for users directly. Additionally, you might also see dominant reservation apps from other countries, like Tabelog, try to answer the US market. Given these competitors, you need to understand why do some competitors win and others fail, and in what aspects of the business. Next, how does a business differentiate? The importance of understanding competitors and adapting your roadmap has played out repeatedly in history across some of the biggest companies. Take BlackBerry, for example. In the early 2010s, BlackBerry controlled nearly half of the US smartphone market because they were optimized for what customers valued at the time. Things like physical keyboards, email, security, and reliability for business users. But then iPhone changed the game. Suddenly, customers cared more about touchscreens, apps, mobile browsing, and overall user experience. Once you understand who you're building for and how you fit in the competitive landscape, the next question is how you turn your product into a business. Because a product can solve a real problem and still fail as a business if customers won't pay enough, the margins don't work, or the model doesn't scale. First, you need to understand the basic economics of your product. What's the difference between revenue, cost, profit, and margin? A quick recap here. Revenue is the money the business brings in. Costs are what the business spends to deliver the product and operate. Profit is what's left after those costs, meaning profit equals revenue minus cost. And lastly, margin shows how much of each dollar of revenue turns into profit. What does the unit economics look like behind each transaction? And is it healthy? For example, if you were a PM at DoorDash, you'd want to make sure you make money on each order after paying delivery drivers and restaurants. Given those margins, you need to decide if you're able to push discounts to acquire new customers while still keeping the business profitable. That brings us to customer acquisition costs, or how much does it cost to acquire a customer? For the same DoorDash example, if DoorDash spends $20 in discounts and ads to acquire a new customer, you need to know whether that customer will order enough over time to make that $20 worth it. And lastly, you should understand what a customer's lifetime value is, or how much money a customer is expected to generate for as long as they remain a customer. Once you understand how money flows through the business, the next layer is understanding business models. This matters because the way a company makes money shapes almost everything. What gets built, what gets prioritized, how customers adopt the product, and how the company grows. For business models, some examples include software as a service, or SaaS, which is where customers pay to use software on a recurring basis. Examples include Zoom or DocuSign. Another type of business model is a marketplace, where the product connects buyers and sellers and usually takes a fee from each transaction. Some examples include Airbnb and Depop. Next, we have a platform business, where the company creates a system that other people or businesses can operate or build on top of, and the company makes money by taking a fee, charging for access, or supporting transactions within the platform. For example, Shopify lets businesses create online stores and charges merchants subscription fees and transaction fees to run their business on the platform. And lastly, we have a pure product business, where customers pay directly for a product, often as a one-time purchase. Some examples include Procreate and video games like Minecraft. And keep in mind, a company can use different types of business models at the same time. For example, Amazon is a marketplace because third-party sellers sell products on the platform, but it's also subscription-based through Amazon Prime. And on top of choosing a business model, you also need to understand different monetization and pricing strategies. Here are a few common examples. First, we have freemium, where the product is free to start, but users pay for extra features. Some examples include Canva and Duolingo. Next is ad-supported, where users use the product for free and the company makes money from ads. Some examples include YouTube and Reddit. Then there's pay-to-play, where users pay once upfront to access the product, like Minecraft and Procreate. Next, we have subscription-based models, where users pay at a cadence, like weekly, monthly, or yearly. Some examples include Netflix and Spotify. Another common monetization model is transaction-based, where the company takes a cut every time a transaction happens, like Airbnb taking a fee on bookings or Uber taking a percentage of each ride. And lastly, we have seat-based pricing, where companies pay based on the number of users who will be using the product. Some examples include Slack and Salesforce. Beyond the pricing model itself, you need to understand what customers are willing to pay for and whether your pricing reflects the value that they actually get. Else, users might churn. Now that you understand who your customer is and what they're willing to pay for, the next question is how to retain them, because sustainable businesses are built on customers who continue getting value from their product over time, not just one-time signups. Customer retention refers to a company's ability to keep customers coming back through repeated usage, deeper engagement, or expanded adoption of the product. A common way companies visualize retention is through retention curves, which show whether users continue getting value from the product over time or gradually stop using it. For example, if a team starts using Slack, a declining retention curve would mean that they tried it for a few weeks, maybe sent some messages, but eventually went back to email, meetings, or other tools. But retention patterns can look very different depending on the product and the type of customer using it. For example, with TurboTax, you wouldn't measure retention week by week like you would with a product like Slack. Most people only use TurboTax once a year during tax season. So strong retention means that customers come back year over year when they need to file taxes again. But understanding retention isn't just about knowing who stays. It's also about understanding who leaves and why, which is where churn comes in. Analyzing churn can help uncover friction points, missing value, or weaknesses in the product experience. For example, if users leave Canva in the first week, they may have struggled to create their first design or didn't understand the value. That points to an onboarding or activation problem. But if users leave after 6 months, the issue is different. Maybe they got value at first, but eventually ran out of use cases, hit limits in the free plan, or didn't see enough reason to upgrade. That points to a long-term value or monetization problem. And when the right customers activate, retain, and keep getting value, that's when you start to see product market fit. Product market fit means you found a specific customer segment, a painful problem, and a product that solves it well enough that customers consistently adopt it and are willing to pay for it. Now that we understand how to retain customers, the last piece is understanding how the business grows. Before you can grow a business, you first need to establish how it's positioned and how it goes to market. Positioning is how customers understand your product, what it does, who it's for, and why it's better than the alternatives. Go-to-market is how you get that message in front of the right customers, whether through sales, marketing, partnerships, content, community, or the product itself. Sometimes we see that the best product doesn't always win. It needs to be positioned well and sold to the right people. As a PM, you should understand what's the value proposition of your product? And does that align with how customers actually describe and value the product? For example, Airbnb originally started as an air bed and breakfast, where people could stay in someone's spare room as a cheaper alternative to hotels. But over time, customers started valuing Airbnb less as a cheaper alternative to hotels and more as a way to have unique, local, and flexible travel experiences. Airbnb noticed that shift and leaned into it by building features around discovery and unique stays like Airbnb categories and experiences. Instead of competing mainly on price, they focused on the experience customers actually cared about, which helped Airbnb stand out from traditional hotels and charge more for unique stays, which increased their pricing power. Once a product is positioned well, the next challenge is actually acquiring customers. Acquisition is how a company brings in new customers, whether through marketing, sales, referrals, partnerships, or SEO. And there are two main ways products typically drive acquisition. The first is through a funnel, where users gradually move through a series of steps before becoming customers. For example, someone might see a TikTok about Duolingo, download the app, complete their first lesson, and get started on the freemium version. Eventually, they might start using some premium features as well. The second method is a growth loop, where existing users naturally bring in new users through the product itself. For example, when someone sends a Calendly link or a Particle invite, the product naturally gets introduced to new people, many of whom may later start using it themselves. But growth doesn't only come from acquiring new customers. Businesses can also grow through expansion, which is increasing revenue from existing customers instead of acquiring new ones. This usually happens in two ways: upsell and cross-sell. Starting with upsell, this is when a customer pays more for a better version of what they already use, like upgrading to a higher plan, adding more seats, or increasing usage. For example, if a customer is using Amazon for free, Amazon might offer them a Prime free trial, hoping they eventually convert into a paying Prime customer. If successful, that's an upsell. Cross-sell is when a customer buys a different product from the same company. For example, if someone already has Amazon Prime and often searches for books, Amazon might cross-sell Kindle Unlimited by recommending it while they're browsing books. And in some products, growth can become somewhat self-enforcing through network effects, where the experience improves as more people join and use the product. For example, LinkedIn becomes more valuable as more professionals join because there are more people to connect with, hire, and learn from. Similarly, Uber gets better as more riders and drivers join the platform, since riders get faster pickups while drivers get more ride demand. Great. Now that we've covered the core business concepts every PM should know, I want to end off with a few principles to help you think like a business-minded PM. The first one is to make sure to tie every roadmap decision to a business outcome. Every feature is a bet, and every bet requires investment: engineering time, design time, go-to-market effort, and opportunity cost. So if you can't clearly explain and sell how the work that you're doing helps the business, whether through revenue, retention, efficiency, expansion, or competitive advantage, it's going to be hard to justify to the team why they should invest in it. The next principle is to know the field better than anyone in the room. Your competitive edge as a PM isn't being the smartest. It's about being the most informed. Know your customers better than your sales team. Know your competitors better than your marketing team. Know your market better than your CEO. And when you walk into a meeting, having actually talked to users last week, study the competitive landscape, and understand how your market is changing, your opinions carry more weight because they're grounded in reality. And the last principle is that you should keep learning about how businesses work. Pay attention to how companies grow, reposition, price, launch new products, respond to competitors, and recover from mistakes. The more you understand the challenges other businesses go through, the better decisions you can make for your own product. Let's take Domino's as an example. In the late 2000s, customers were openly criticizing the pizza and saying it tasted like cardboard. But instead of pretending the problem didn't exist, Domino's publicly acknowledged the feedback and rebuilt the recipe from the ground up. Taking ownership helped Domino's rebuild customer trust and turn a product problem into a major business turnaround, with global sales doubling between 2008 and 2016. And that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful in making the business side of product management feel much more practical and less vague. At the end of the day, product management is about making good decisions for the business. The best PMs understand who they're building for, how the company makes money, why customers stay, and what actually drives growth. And once you understand how all those pieces connect, you'll become a much stronger product manager. And in my next video, I'll cover all of the UX concepts PMs need to know, so I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.